Imagine a family dinner where the forks turn to bayonets. Brothers, fathers, sons forced to choose sides in a war that devours 2% of the nation. Over 600,000 dead, cities in ashes, a dream of unity shattered on blood-soaked fields. This isn't ancient history. It's America's original sin, echoing in every divide today. Welcome to the Civil War, where freedom's price was paid in the currency of kin against kin. The American Civil War wasn't born in a vacuum. It festered for decades. A powder keg lit by the flickering torch of liberty that the Revolution promised but never fully delivered. From 1776 onward, the young United States wrestled with a paradox. A nation founded on all men are created equal, yet built on the backs of 4 million enslaved people, mostly in the South's Cotton Kingdom. By the 1850s, the Industrial Revolution had split the country like a fault line. The North boomed with factories, railroads, and immigrant labor free, if exploited. The South clung to agrarian aristocracy, where King Cotton ruled, and human bondage was the engine of empire. Slavery wasn't just economic, it was existential. Southerners saw it as a positive good, a paternalistic system ordained by God and nature. Northern abolitionists, fueled by evangelical firebrands like William Lloyd Garrison and Harriet Beecher Stowe, whose Uncle Tom's Cabin sold 300,000 copies in its first year, branded it a moral abomination. The Compromise of 1850 tried to paper over the cracks. California enters as free, but a brutal Fugitive Slave Act forces Northerners to hunt runaways. Then Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 ignites Bleeding Kansas, a mini-civil war where pro-slavery border ruffians clash with Free Staters, leaving 200 dead in the dirt. Enter Abraham Lincoln, a lanky Illinois lawyer, self-taught, risen from log cabins to the national stage. His 1858 debates with Stephen Douglas electrify the nation. A house divided against itself cannot stand, he warns. He loses the Senate race, but wins hearts in the presidency in 1860, with just 40% of the popular vote, zero from the Deep South. That's the spark. South Carolina secedes December 20, 1860, declaring Lincoln's election a declaration of war upon our rights. By February 1861, the Confederacy forms, with Jefferson Davis as president. 11 states gone. The Union, fractured, furious, and on the brink. But why did it explode? Economics masked deeper rot. States' rights, tariffs, cultural chasms. At its core, slavery. The South fought to preserve it. The North initially, to preserve the Union. What follows is 4 years of hellfire that tests every American soul. Buckle up, we're marching from Sumter to Appomattox, through battles that scarred the land and amendments that tried to heal it. April 12, 1861. Dawn, over Charleston Harbor. Confederate batteries roar to life, shells arcing like fiery comets, toward Fort Sumter, the last Union holdout in southern waters. For 34 hours, Major Robert Anderson's 85 men huddle in bomb-proof casemates as 3,000 rounds pound the walls. No deaths miraculously, but the surrender is total. Lincoln calls for 75,000 volunteers to crush the rebellion. The North erupts in patriotic fever. Flags wave from Boston to Buffalo. But for more, states Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina assist, in solidarity. The war is on. April 12, 1861. Dawn, over Charleston Harbor. Confederate batteries roar to life, shells arcing like fiery comets, toward Fort Sumter, the last Union holdout in southern waters. For 34 hours, Major Robert Anderson's 85 men huddle in bomb-proof casemates as 3,000 rounds pound the walls. No deaths miraculously, but the surrender is total. Lincoln calls for 75,000 volunteers to crush the rebellion. The North erupts in patriotic fever. Flags wave from Boston to Buffalo, but for more states Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina secede, in solidarity. The war is on. First Bull Run, July 21, 1861. Washington picnickers cheer as green Union troops march south, expecting a quick rout. On to Richmond, they chant, but Confederate General P. Beauregard and Tom Stonewall Jackson, eyes blazing like biblical prophets, ambush them along Bull Run Creek. Panic spreads like wildfire. A Union rout, 2,900 casualties. The myth of a 90-day war shatters. Lincoln appoints George McClellan, the young Napoleon, to reorganize the Army of the Potomac. Charismatic, meticulous, but cautious to a fault, McClellan dithers, whispering of phantom foes. Meanwhile, the Confederacy scrambles. Jefferson Davis, a West Point grad and former Secretary of War, centralizes command in Richmond. They bet on cotton diplomacy. Starve Europe's mills, force recognition. It flops. Britain and France stay neutral, sniffing Lincoln's blockade. Naval war erupts. The CSS Virginia ex Merrimack, duels the USS Monitor off Hampton Roads in March 1862, ironclads clanging like mechanical monsters. A draw, but it revolutionizes warfare. No wooden ships ever again. Shiloh, April 6, 1862. Tennessee wilderness turned slaughterhouse. Ulysses S. Grant, the quiet Ohioan with a drinking habit and unyielding jaw, camps lazily by the Tennessee River. Surprise attack by Albert Sidney. Johnston's 44,000 rebels catches him flat-footed. Sunday's bloodbath. 24,000 casualties. Johnston dead from a stray bullet. Grant rallies Monday, reinforced by Don Carlos Buell's army. I propose to move immediately upon your works, he tells Beauregard. Victory, but Pyrrhic Shiloh exposes the war's brutality, with surgeons amputating limbs by lantern light. The East fares no better. McClellan's Peninsula Campaign. 100,000 Yankees slogged toward Richmond through Virginia swamps. Robert E. Lee takes command, July 1862. Davis's bold stroke. The aristocrat from Arlington, grandson of revolutionaries, unleashes fury. 7 days battles, savage counterpunches, at Gaines' Mill, Malvern Hill. McClellan retreats to his gunboats, 16,000 lost for naught. Lincoln fumes. If McClellan won't fight, I'll find someone who will. Enter the Emancipation Proclamation tease. Lincoln, ever the lawyer, drafts it after Antietam, but that's next. For now, the war is stalemate. North controls the seas, South, the heartland. But morale, crumbling. September 17, 1862, Antietam Creek, Maryland, the single bloodiest day in American history. Lee, invading North for the first time, seeks foreign aid and morale boost. His lost order falls into Union hands. McClellan knows the plan, but moves like molasses. 87,000 Yankees clash with 38,000 rebels in a cornfield turned charnel house. Dawn, General Joseph Hooker's chorus charges. Every stalk is cut as by a storm of bullets, he later writes. 2,000 fall in 20 minutes. The sunken road Bloody Lane becomes a grave. Ambrose Burnside's bridge assault bogs down, rebels enfilading from above. By dusk, 23,000 lie dead, dying, or wounded bodies piled like cordwood. McClellan halts, claiming victory by holding ground. Lee slinks south, but the real weapon, ink. 5 days later, Lincoln issues the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. All persons held as slaves within any state, in rebellion shall be thenceforward, and forever free. Not immediate tied to Union victories, but it reframes the war. No more preserve the Union at all costs. Now, it's moral crusade. Slaves flee plantations by the thousands, contraband swelling Union lines, black regiments form. The 54th Massachusetts, led by Robert Gouldshaw, pravis valor at Fort Wagner. Harriet Tubman, she scouts, spies, even leads a raid, freeing 750. Lincoln sacks, McClellan too slow. Enter Ambrose Burnside, Fredericksburg, December 1862. Disaster. 120,000 Union troops assault Marye's Heights, a stone wall defended by 2,000 Confederates. Wave after wave mowed down. 12,600 casualties to 5,300 rebel. It is well that war is so terrible, Lee quips. Lest we grow too fond of it. Chancellorsville, May 1863. Lee's masterpiece. Outnumbered 2-1, he splits forces, feints with Stonewall Jackson. Flank attack through the wilderness. Jackson's men scream charge, like demons. Victory, but Pyrrhic, Jackson, mistaken for Yankee by his own, shot in the arm. Dies whispering of lemon pies. Confederacy peaks Lee eyes, Pennsylvania. Gettysburg, July 1 to 3, 1863. Destiny's Crossroads, Lee's 75,000 invade, seeking shoes in York and glory in Harrisburg. But Union cavalry under John Buford holds the high ground first. Day 1, rebels push to Seminary Ridge. Day 2, Little Round Top. Joshua Chamberlain's 20th Maine, bayonets fixed, charges down the hill, saving the flank. Devil's Den, peach orchards, snipers and boulders, artillery duels that shake the earth. Day 3, the high-water mark. 12,500 Confederates and pickets charge march across a mile of open fields toward the Union Center. 150 cannons roar prelude, then silence. For Virginia, they yell, flags snapping. But Cemetery Ridge bristles with rifles. Grape and canister tear ranks. Survivors claw over the wall, only to fall. Pickett loses 3/4 of his men. Lee, it is all my fault. Retreat under pelting rain, wagons groaning with wounded. 51,000 total casualties. Gettysburg breaks the invasion dream. Simultaneously, Vicksburg falls July 4th. Grant besieges the Mississippi fortress for 47 days, starving it out. Pemberton's surrender splits the Confederacy. West secured. East, teetering. Lincoln promotes Grant to general-in-chief. The tide turns, but the human toll, unspeakable. Clara Barton binds wounds under fire. Walt Whitman nurses in hospitals, penning "Oh Captain, my Captain." For Lincoln, women like Mary Chestnut, diary, the home front horrors. Richmond rations dwindle, bread riots erupt. 864. Lincoln's re-election hangs by a thread. War weariness grips the North. Draft riots rock New York. Irish laborers torch black orphanages, 120 dead. Grant, now Supreme Commander, vows no more gentlemanly war. "I propose to fight it out on this line, if it takes all summer." Overland Campaign. Wilderness to Cold Harbor, May-June 1864. Grant's 100,000 cross the Rapidan into tangled Virginia brush. Day 1. Smoke blinds the sun. 29,000 fall in flames, and frenzy neither side wins. But Grant presses south, unlike McClellan. Spotsylvania, bloody angle. 18 hours of hand-to-hand, mud churned to mortar. Cold Harbor. June 3. Grant orders frontal assault on entrenched rebels. 7,000 Union dead in 20 minutes. His eternal regret. "I have always regretted that the last assault at Cold Harbor was ordered," he confesses in memoirs. But Grant grinds on besieging Petersburg, Richmond's gateway. Trenches stretch 30 miles, a premonition of World War I. Meanwhile, Sherman in Georgia. War is cruelty, and you cannot refine it. Atlanta Campaign. 100,000. Blue versus Joe Johnston's 60,000 gray. Sherman's March to the Sea. November-December, 1864. 62,000 men cut loose from supply lines, living off the land. Make the South feel the war, Sherman orders through Georgia. Railroads twisted into Sherman's neckties, plantations torched, slaves cheering liberation. Milestones, Liberty Bells ring in Savannah, gifted to Lincoln for Christmas. Casualties light, minimal combat but psychological devastation. Hell has no fury like a nation scorned, a rebel diarist laments. South fights on, defiant. Hood invades Tennessee. Franklin, November 30th 8, Confederate assaults, 8,000 dead in hours. Nashville, George Thomas's hammer, crushes remnants. Confederacy bleeds, white man power gone, inflation at 9,000%. Homefront horrors mount. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, November 1863. 7 years ago, 272 words that redefine democracy. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. But equality. The proclamation frees slaves in rebel states. 300,000 enlist in USCT regiments, paid less, buried in unmarked graves if captured. April 1865. Spring blooms over Virginia's desolation. Petersburg cracks, Grant sappers tunnel beneath, but the mine explodes prematurely. Crater battle a fiasco. 4,000 Union dead in the pit. April 2nd, Richmond falls. Davis flees, Confederacy dissolves. Lee, gaunt and gray, evades Grant's noose. Appomattox Courthouse, April 9th, Palm Sunday. Lee's 28,000, ragged and starving, face Grant's 100,000. In Wilmer, McLean's parlor war started in his Charleston backyard. Ends here. Terms read: all officers and men to be paroled. Arms stacked. Grant, unconditional surrender himself, offers rations. The war is over. Tears flow. Rebels march home under peach trees. Total dead. 620,000 more Americans than all other wars combined. Joy erupts in the North. Bonfires, bells, but shadows loom. April 14th, Ford's Theater. Lincoln, laughing at our American cousin, shot by John Wilkes Booth. Semper Tyrannis, the actor Avenger, Confederate sympathizer, flees on horseback. Lincoln lingers 9 hours, whispering to Mary, she belongs to the country. Dead at 56, Booth cornered in a Virginia barn, shot dead. Conspirators hang Mary Surratt, the first woman executed by the U.S. Reconstruction dawns, bittersweet. 13th Amendment ratified, December 1865. Slavery abolished. Freedmen's Bureau aids 4 million. Black codes rise in South. Vagrancy laws re-enslaved. Radical Republicans push 14th and 15th Amendments. Citizenship, voting rights. But Johnson, Lincoln's successor, vetoes reforms. Impeached, acquitted by 1 vote. KKK terrorizes 1,000 lynchings by 1870. Compromise of 1877 ends federal oversight. Jim Crow entrenches. The war remakes America. Railroads span continents. Industry surges. Women enter workforce. But scars, deep memorials, rise. Gettysburg's, Cyclorama, Arlington's unknowns. Lost cause mythology whitewashes slavery, glorifies Lee. The Civil War, brother versus brother, not just in arms but in the American soul. It preserved a union that might have splintered into petty fiefdoms, ended the peculiar institution that stained the founders' vision. Yet it birthed new chain segregation, inequality that festers into civil rights battles a century later. Lincoln's unfinished work, a more perfect union. Heroes abound: Grant's tenacity, Sherman's ruthlessness, Tubman's courage, Chamberlain's bayonets. Villains: systems more than men, slavery's architects. Wars: profiteers. What if? No war, no Confederacy thriving on cotton. Or a quicker peace, no amendments. History's hinge swings on such what-ifs. This war echoes. In BLM marches, January 6th echoes, every debate on federal power. It's our mirror, flawed, fierce, formative. If this dive stirred your blood, hit like. History needs warriors. Subscribe for unvarnished truths. Next, the World Wars. Comment: was it inevitable, heroic, tragic? Sources below: Battle Cry of Freedom by McPherson, Loc Archives, Ken Burns Epic. Share your family's war stories. Until next time, remember the cost of unity. Fade to black.